Hi there, this video is on how we manage sand dunes. We're going to split into two traditional and contemporary methods of dune protection, and we're going to be able to try and explain how dune systems can be managed. So by the end of the video, I want you to have known how we can manage dunes, explain the different techniques, and start to suggest which ones are the best. So remember that when we look at management approaches, we have two. We have traditional and then contemporary. Traditional, we're talking pre-British and European colonization of Australia. So traditional management processes, well, in truth, little's known about how Aboriginal people used coasts. Middens, which are mounds of shells being found in a number of locations around the coast of Australia. We do have some on the central coast. They are dotted up and down the central coast, and basically that's a sign that they were a place where shellfish was in abundance, and a sign to other people that that food was available. However, as we know from Lady Elliot Island, sea level rises has got rid of any of the evidence of management strategies that Aboriginal people used to have. So all we have now is obviously what elders passed down to current generation of Aboriginal people. So we've got to remember, Aboriginal people have been around here for, 60 to 70,000 years. So a lot of their management was on a small scale, using fire stink management. And when I say small scale, that's not to knock them or put them down, but fish traps that are made out of dirt, out of rocks. That's what I mean by small scale. It wasn't this mass produced like we have farming nowadays. So it's quite easy to mistake, management strategies for, piles of sticks, piles of stones. So our knowledge on Aboriginal farming management is improving, and it is getting better. And we have started to see that there was farming techniques, particularly for eels in the Northern Territory, and I'll be showing you a few videos on that that demonstrates that. So traditional management approaches at the moment in time are quite limited, but they're still there. We have to look very, very closely, because Aboriginal management was very closely associated with sustainable management, and the environment wasn't touched in a negative way. When we come to contemporary management techniques, this idea that, if we're building on a sand dune, if we're building in coastal areas that are sensitive to change, it's only recently that we've decided, well, we must build and make sure that we are concerned with the environment. So we can protect dunes. So let's have a look at some of the protection methods. Dune restoration can be very costly, and I've put there a linking back to a couple of weeks ago talking about utility and option value. That's the price people will pay to save those ecosystems. There is a better, therefore it is much better to manage existing dunes in a way which protects them from damage, and we can do that by using land use controls, preventing people from using them or preventing certain activities. So when you try and think of some examples on the Central Coast, we can use fencing, we can restrict people using the area, and there are heaps of examples on the Central Coast, Shelley Beach being one of them. We have fence access ways, so where we do need to access the beach, then we do have fenced off areas, so we still have people walking up and down dunes, but in a sort of protected way. And then we have board and chain paths, so this is where we might have some wooden planks or wooden boards laid down on top of a set of chains, which stops footpath erosion on the dunes. Footpath erosion is when people keep walking. You'll see this on the mud track. Once people start walking, the grass there gets trodden down, and eventually, because of people keep treading on it, the vegetation dies off. As a result, you start having patches of dirt, and as a result, they go down and fill up with water. When they do fill up with water, people start walking around them, which means the vegetation there dies and so on. So that's footpath erosion. It's harder to see on sand dunes, because once an area's been, sort of walked on, people just keep walking on it. It's not as bad as when we walk on dirt. So we can really easily manage footpath erosion on sand dunes by restricting where people walk. Then we have dune restoration stabilisation. So because of constant exposure to wind, any change in vegetation cover could have detrimental effects upon the dune. Dune stabilisation aims to secure exposed sand and stop it from being blown away, and that's what dune reconstruction is. So we can use heavy machinery to change the shape of the dune to make it more aerodynamic. We can also rebuild the sand, but we need to get a cheap source of sand, and that's why it makes it so expensive. Also, there's no guarantee it's going to stay, because the wind will keep blowing and blow it away, because sand needs to be dry. Leave it out, it becomes dried, so it can be quite costly, but short term pretty good. Sand fences. So instead of using heavy machinery, we can use sand to keep the sand from blowing away. So what we do, we just have these fences with bits of fabric that stops the sand from moving. They're at Shelley Beach as well, and that's all to keep the sand in one place. And then we have mats and netting. Again, that's to stop the sand being blown away and to transplant dune grasses and seedlings. We have brushwood. This technique involves laying the dry branches over the surface of the sand to prevent the sand being blown away. I haven't seen that done on the Central Coast, but there are some examples further north of the Central Coast that where people use where brushwood is available and is cheap. Then we have revegetation. This has been done on the Central Coast, particularly not North Entrance, but the lakes, beaches. There's been a big series of replantation of vegetation to make sure that stabilises the dune. That's the most common method, and it's the most cheapest as well. However, we have to be careful that we don't introduce weeds like the bitto bush, which can outgrow some of the native plants. So there you have it. There's traditional methods as well as contemporary management techniques. I hope that helps with identifying different management strategies. What's the best one? Probably a combination of all, but we need to make sure that we look at what we're trying to protect and how we can do it, and how we can do it in a sustainable way, and take notice of the surrounding ecosystems. So there isn't a defined answer to that, and it does depend on the circumstance. So careful management is needed, and careful planning is also needed before we suggest a management technique. Okay, I hope that helps with all your information about management strategies. Okay, thanks.